Hello, my name's Iggy Tan. I'm the Managing Director of Altech Chemicals, and we're a company that is using game-changing technology to advance silicon graphite anode material in Europe.
Iggy, good introduction, short and sweet. Nice to meet you. Thank you for coming on this call. I'm very much looking forward to learning more about your company in the next half an hour or so.
Thanks for having me.
What I know about anode coating technology is not worth talking about, but you are in the perfect position to explain to me, and you've got a very helpful website. I really like the fact that you've got that profile at the top of your website, which talks anybody who's interested in your company about the kind of the basic kind of activities of your company. And really, it's kind of two parts. You've got this a plant in Malaysia and producing alumina and kaolin, and the operation in Australia. But the main thrust of the company, as it seems today, is the high-tech aspect in Germany feeding the European market. A, is that right? And B, could you just kind of give us kind of an overview of that high-tech end of the kind of the Germany side of things?
Yeah, so we are very much focused on silicon in lithium-ion batteries. As you know, the development of lithium-ion batteries has focused around cathode material for many decades. And it's time now that the development should be around the anode side or the graphite side to increase the density of these batteries. Now, Tesla in their last battery day have announced that they are looking for silicon to be incorporated in lithium-ion batteries. And the interesting thing is that silicon has 10 times the energy density than graphite. So from a layman's point of view, there is 10 times more sites that the lithium can sit on in silicon. Now, if silicon is such a great anode material, why isn't it been incorporated in commercial batteries today? And really, there's two major barriers to this. The first one is that silicon expands 300% in volume during the lithiation process, and it gets to the point that it fractures. And the second point...
Sorry, when you say lithiation process, do you mean that when it's actually being created, when you're forming the anode, you coat it with lithium, and in that process, the silicon expands and it cracks?
It's actually in the battery when you do your first charge. So when you first charge and discharge it, that's the lithiation process. And that fractures and to the point that it causes delamination in the battery and swelling and so on. The other major problem is that the silicon has a first cycle loss of nearly 50%. What it does, it grabs 50% of the lithium and makes it inactive to the battery, and it forms an SEI layer. I know it's sounds very technical, but essentially those two problems stop silicon being in commercial batteries today. And a lot of companies have been trying to resolve this problem. And our company last year announced that we have cracked the silicon code, and essentially we have produced batteries that are 30% higher energy density because we've incorporated the silicon and solved those two problems. And the way we've done that is basically we use a high purity alumina layer to coat the silicon and graphite particles, and that contains the particles from expanding, and it also resolves that first cycle loss. So very important game-changing news that we did last year.
I mean, wow. First of all, that's extraordinary. But essentially, so silicon is this kind of the wonder material that is 10 times can store 10 times more energy than graphite. Yeah. But the problem was that it breaks on first charge, and then you get 50% loss on first charge. So it was completely impractical, and the theory didn't match up with the practice. Yeah. You're saying that with a high purity alumina coating around the silicon, it can actually contain that expansion charge. So I mean, it actually binds it together.
Yes, so it contains the fracture, and because you've already got a layer, you don't absorb the lithium, and you lose that in your first cycle. So the technology works. We have run batteries for very long cycles. We know they're stable. We're now at the point where we're moving beyond the 30%, and our labs in Australia are now pushing beyond 30%. But more importantly, we are now moving to the commercial stage, and I can talk a bit about the proposed plant that we're going to build in Saxony, Germany.
But before we get onto that, can I just ask, the last Tesla day was, I think, about 2 years ago. Was it kind of May, June 2020? But you presumably have been working on this problem prior to that. This is it's not been a quick fix, or maybe it has. I mean, how long has it been in the gestation process?
Yeah, we have been working it for the last 12, 18 months, but there are also many companies in the world is trying to solve this problem. And some of the solutions have been to use very tiny particles of silicon, which is called really nano silicon. And that seems to work as well. But the problem is very expensive to get to nano size silicon particles, and also very hard to commercialize and scale up. So our solution is a different solution, but we don't have to use nanoparticles. So that really brings the cost of our product right down compared to some of the alternatives.
And what was the leap to realizing that the alumina coating, or a high purity alumina coating, because you wouldn't normally think to put a kind of a membrane in between your two active elements?
Yeah, so that's interesting. First, the good point is that the alumina coating is at 2 nanometers in layer size, and it doesn't stop the lithium from going through it. So the lithium passes through the layer, and it doesn't stop the performance of the battery. So that's the first important point. There's also a lot of research that has been done around alumina coating. So we basically took all that research that is around and use our technology to make it work at a much cheaper process and ability to scale up. And essentially that's what we've done.
And if I heard you right, you said you'd been working on it for 12 to 18 months. So essentially you heard the call from Elon Musk at the battery day, and then you put yourselves to applying the technology to resolving the problem that he raised.
Yes, I think there is a push worldwide to resolve this silicon issue, and we've been fortunate to be able to crack this silicon problem.
Okay, as I understand it from reading your materials, there are two things here. One is you're taking a plant to commercial advancement. You've got a pre-feasibility, and you're raising finance to build a plant. And the other is you're doing research on improving the process further still. Is that correct? You've got the two approaches.
Yeah, that's correct. So we have been working also on a preliminary feasibility study. So great, you've got a concept and you've done a lot of the research. Now we've got to take it to commercial terms. So essentially, we want to build a 10,000 ton per annum silicon graphite plant, and the product that we are going to produce is called Silumina anodes. And essentially what we do is we buy graphite material and we buy silicon material. We coat the two types of material with our alumina coating technology. We put it together as a product called Silumina anodes. And recently, we announced the economics for it, very attractive economics. The capital costs or the investment is around $95 million US, not a very large number, but the returns is quite outstanding. Actually, the net present value is around $507 million. The internal rate of...
So sorry, the capex, I thought it was 298 million.
No. This is for the Silumina anode plant. I think the capex you're talking about is for the high purity alumina Malaysian plant, which is a different project. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, crosswise.
Yeah. So internal rate of return for the Silumina anode project is 40%. It generates around 63 million US EBITDA, or net cash per annum. And the payback is around 3.1 years. So very attractive economics. The capital cost is $95 not very large. And so because of the outstanding economics, the board has decided that we move into a definitive feasibility study. So we're advancing that. Now, to support the project going to commercial application, we also have to produce commercial samples so that we can get it to our end customers, who will then go through their extensive qualification process. So if you're going to use our material to make a lithium-ion battery that goes into an electric vehicle, you can imagine the amount of testing that has to happen and the qualification process that has to happen before the product even gets to the market. So to do that, we have to build a pilot plant. So the site that we have in Germany, we have already purchased the site. And next door, there is a warehouse, a large warehouse space that we have leased, and we are now in the process of designing a pilot plant and building that pilot plant for those commercial samples.
Great. Okay. And what's the timeline on that? I mean, when are you looking to have that completed in the first commercial samples out?
Well, hopefully the pilot plan will be completed by the end of this year, and we will then commission and optimize the process and get some of the samples to some of the downstream customers. We also have a lot of interest, as you can imagine, and we have signed up 2 NDAs with 2 German automakers, and also an NDA with a European battery maker. So there's a lot of interest in the possibility of an extra higher energy density battery, of course, because if you get a higher energy density, you can actually reduce the cost of the battery by scaling down the weight of the battery. And that really is the next phase of lithium-ion battery development.
It's weight reduction, absolutely, crystal clear. But there's also, you're also talking about range extension and life extension. So it's not just a weight reduction, it's the life of battery as well, isn't it?
Yeah, so to give you a context of the graphite anode, and again, it's a technical term, runs about 330 milliamps per hour per gram. It's just a measure of the current. If you add 10% of silicon in the graphite, it doubles that to around 600 to 700 milliamps just by adding 10% of silicon. If you add 20% of silicon in that and you resolve those problems, it can go from 300 milliamps to nearly 900 milliamps. So nearly triple the energy density by just adding 20% of silicon. So you can see the massive potential of silicon being in these batteries.
And your pilot is going to be working on plus 30% silicon.
Well, that's our ultimate aim. So we are moving towards that. At the moment, we've announced that we've got 30% higher energy batteries, and we're now moving towards that commercial side. And the other important thing is that we have partnered with European suppliers, because I'm sure you realize that with the Ukraine crisis and supply chain issues, it's important that all the materials for the European battery industry or the EV industry is sourced within Europe. So that's an important point. And so we source our graphite from SGL Carbon, a very large European graphite producer, and we source our silicon from Ferroglobe, one of the largest European silicon producer. And that's very important for the end product going into the European EV industry.
Thank you. Yeah, it certainly is. The supply lines, the provenance of your materials is absolutely crucial going forward. So just getting my head around the energy savings and the energy efficiencies. Your test work to date has shown a 30% increase in energy efficiency. And what increase on this silicon content in the anode is that on prior?
Well, at the moment, it's confidential that the amount of silicon we're using for that. But essentially, we're happy to say that a normal battery would run around 300 milliamps. per gram per hour. Our batteries are running at 430 milliamps per gram per hour, which is that 30% increase. And that is a massive step change, because essentially the lithium-ion battery is very stable in the energy density. So to get to the next step, it's a very big change to get there, and it is game-changing technology.
And if you take your pilot plant, and you advance to a full feasibility study on the basis of a battery that's going to work on 430 milliamps per gram per hour. What happens if in your R&D in Australia you are able to load your silicon higher and you can produce something which is better than that? Can you then go back? Can you go back and change your, how flexible is your pilot plant? How flexible is your feasibility study?
Yeah, so good question. Essentially, we build a plant that we can adjust the amount of silicon material in the graphite, and we can basically dial that in. And so as the development goes, we'll start pushing the silicon content higher and higher. So there is that flexibility, and it's totally flexible.
And what are the challenges on that silica loading? Is it the getting the right size of the silica grain, the nano coating? Is it distribution? Is it a construction thing? What are your scientists? What's the R&D really focusing on, trying to get that milliamps per hour per gram up? What are their key challenges?
Yeah, it's not only getting that up, but it's getting it stable over the life of the battery. So in the 430 milliamps material that we've run it for many cycles, so 400, 500, 600 cycles, and each cycle is time to run the cycles, but what it does, it demonstrates stability over the life of the battery. You don't want the battery to start at 430 milliamps in the first 10 cycles and then drop away to just the graphite type of battery. So it's important to get that stability for long periods of time, and our scientists are adjusting formulations and to get that stability.
Okay, so essentially every time they have a breakthrough, they've got to then think ahead and say, oh, this is going to take 8, 12, whatever it is, 16 months to prove up. So you don't want to run too many of those. You want to make sure that you absolutely are confident about the breakthrough that you've got, and that it is a step change, and that it's worth running those long cycles.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think you should come and work for us. It's exactly that.
The other thing you talk about in your profile, you mentioned the word race to market. It's a race to get this commercial. Can you just kind of describe a little bit about the competitive landscape and why that is so important?
Yeah, this is a unique situation where there is no market today. So we are the first commercial product that is going to hit the market. So it's important that we get to the market as quick as we can, because we know that people are going to try to copy it and try to follow. So it's very important to get to the market, establish your end customer base, your operation, and you get up and going. So just like any other product, we are the first to market, and we need to get there quick.
Yeah, good. I've got a couple of, so I had a look at your shareholder register, and it looks as if you've got, 4 kind of institutional groups, Deutsche Balaton, MAA Group, Berhard, Delphi, and SMS. Are those all German institutions, or are some of those international? And that's they're about 30% of the shareholder register.
3 of them are German institutions, and the fourth one is a Malaysian group. It's the group is headed by a prince who's also on our board, and they have been a long-time shareholder of ours.
Okay. And so that's 30%, and the other 70% is?
It's general retail market, so mums and dads, investors, and so on. Yeah.
I mean, when you look down the list of the top 20 shareholders, you do see individuals' names coming in. It looks a little bit retail. Do you have a plan to institutionalize the register from 30%? Are you marketing to institutions at the moment? I see there's conversations. You're in conversations with Norwegian groups, German groups about green bonds, about project finance. Are you going to go? What's your capital raising plans and your marketing strategy?
Yeah, so at the moment we have enough funds to fund the pilot plan and the development of the DFS. Obviously, we always are talking to institutions. We're interested in building that side of the share register. But the retail investment is also important. That creates liquidity. As you can see, we are a highly liquid stock. We can trade, in the last day, we traded nearly 40 million shares. That's high turnover and high liquidity, which the institutions like. So we've got about 6,500 shareholders, quite a big shareholder base. So very exciting stage when we now push into this Silumina anode project. There's a lot of interest and there's a lot of excitement about it.
I'd expect some of the institutions to start viewing this differently and actually wanting to be a part of the business rather than just kind of running a capital gain position on the share price. Rather, I would expect to see institutions saying, actually, I'm going to build a position in this company, but they must be talking to you about critical milestones. What are they saying to you that you have to do before they start backing you in the market?
Well, obviously the milestones was to get the pre-feasibility study out and advance on the pilot plan. So that's all continuing. I think there will be a lot of interest because the project is also a green project. The project in Saxony has been accredited by Cicero, one of the largest accreditation groups in the world, based in Norway, and they've given the project a green status. So what does that mean? Essentially, we use renewable electricity on the operation, and the fact that we are increasing the density of batteries means that per energy unit of CO2 or greenhouse gases, we're actually reducing the CO2 footprint of lithium-ion batteries by doing it. So both the fact that it's doing that as well as we're using renewable energy, we are accredited as a complete green process. So we will attract a lot of institutions. As you know, there's a lot of money looking for climate change projects.
And do you think if you can get this technology out, the market's going to change the lithium demand curve?
We are very focused. Essentially, we're very focused on Europe because we think that Europe will be the story of the lithium-ion battery in the next coming decades, essentially driven by CO2 emission regulations by the EU, which is now translated to all the automakers in Europe announcing they'll go all electric by 2030 and 2035. So all car manufacturers in Europe they've said they've gone all electric. They don't make other types of cars from then on. And so something like 600 gigawatts of battery production capacity has been announced for Europe. Companies like Tesla, CATL, Samsung, etc. And you would have seen in the news that Tesla just opened their gigafactory in Berlin, which is not very far away from our site. So there's a lot of focus around Europe, and there's a lot of focus around Europe in the EVs and the battery side. And the European Union has also said they don't want to rely on materials or batteries coming from outside Europe. So there's a strong focus on being self-sufficient. And I guess from what you've seen from the Ukraine crisis, this is especially important for supply chain issues that Europe is seeing today.
What is out of the scope of this conversation, but will come into focus in Europe in the times to come, is how is the electricity generated and where does that come from? But that's another conversation. I think the European governments and population are going to have a rude awakening as to the source of their electricity. But beyond the scope of this conversation, of course, the other key component in your Silumina anode is alumina. And are you going to be able to incorporate your own alumina into that process? And is that an integrated part of the plan?
Yeah, so what we're doing for the German plant is to get a alumina feedstock that is not centered around the Johor project. And the reason for that in the first phase is that we, in case that we're not tied to the time frame of the Johor project, and at the moment the Johor project is in the financing stage. So we just wanted to be able to get our own alumina to purify it and use it in our coating separate to the Johor project, and that will just decouple the both projects. So we're very focused on the financing of the HPA project in Johor. But this is another opportunity where we take the alumina downstream closer to the lithium-ion battery end user.
You're trying to kind of decouple them. Where are you sourcing your alumina from? You talk about kind of European sources. Where is your Silumina anode alumina going to come from?
Yeah, we buy a feedstock, aluminum hydroxide feedstock from a European supplier, and we have to purify that material and use it in our coating process.
Okay, and that purification and the application is all going to be part of I see your screensaver. It looks like a computer generated image of
this is really the plant that we intend to build in Saxony, Germany, the Silumina anode plant. Yeah.
And so that will include the purification of the alumina.
Yeah.
And then the application. Yeah. In your new mix.
Yes, correct.
Okay, great. And how much of your energy and your time is spent on the Silumina anode, and how much of your energy and time is spent on Johor, the HPA project?
So the Johor project is at funding stage, and we have announced that we're going through the green bond process where we are accessing secondary debt, 144 million US of secondary debt by the green bond process. We've also got a partner that is looking for the equity part of that. So that is running alongside this project. But we're now, because of the opportunity here, we are also putting a lot of effort and resources to commercialize this project as well.
Johor, or the anodes?
Yes, the Silumina anodes, yeah.
Okay, so Silumina anodes. And when you say you've got a partner looking for the equity, is that an operating partner or a kind of a financing partner?
It's actually a US banking group called L. Morgan, and they're looking for equity partners for the Johor project as well.
Okay. Longer term, you see the company kind of spinning out the Johor project as being non-core, with the kind of the Silumina anode being the core growth part of the company, or not?
At the moment, it fits in. The Johor project produces high purity alumina, and in the long term, we can take that high purity alumina and go downstream and use it in Silumina anode plants around Europe. So at this first stage, 10,000 is a very small plant. When you consider that Europe will require something like 600,000 tons of graphite just for the EV industry. So the potential is there.
So when you say graphite, do you mean anode?
Yeah, graphite anodes, because if you take up 600 gigawatts of battery capacity being built, you need about 600,000 tons of graphite. Now, that's the market we're in, because what we're doing is providing graphite with this silicon material, which is a premium anode material.
Forgive my dumb questions, but I'm learning this slowly. So the anode is essentially a graphite anode, but you're incorporating the Silumina, the silicon and the alumina to create a high performance, which can improve your energy density and your range over life of mine.
100% correct.
Okay, and you at this stage you're decoupling the two projects because the HPA project can produce much more, and it just needs its own funding and its own life.
Yeah,
and then
yes, yeah, and the HPA from the Johor project is also used for other applications like LED substrates. It's used in other parts of lithium-ion batteries and other applications. So it has its own demand outside the lithium battery industry.
Okay, and then eventually, later down the line, it might be that you take some of that supply from HPA and you dedicate it to the European anode market.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, good. Just a quick question on HPA and the Johor project. I'm used to seeing alumina coming from bauxite, and yet this is a kaolin project.
Yeah, so you can't actually make high purity alumina from the bauxite process because from bauxite they use sodium hydroxide, and sodium gets caught in the crystal structure and is very difficult to remove it. So you can't actually make high purity alumina or 99.99% alumina from the bauxite route. So you have to start with a different process and different feedstock, and essentially we use kaolin, hydrochloric acid, and that technology allows us to make very pure alumina.
And you calcine the kaolin, you heat it up 700 degrees, cook it up, and then you leach it in hydrochloric acid.
Yeah, and then we purify it, and then we calcine it back to alumina.
And is the HPA market, has that been kind of well established? Has it been using kaolin for decades?
The HPA market today is around 30,000 tons per annum a year, and also the difference is that they don't use kaolin today. They use in order to make high purity alumina, they have to use aluminium metal, which is a very purified material, and they dissolve it and hydrolyze it and take it to alumina. Our process uses kaolin, which is a disruptive process. We don't use aluminium metal, which is a very expensive feedstock. We use kaolin, which is essentially a mineral that we own, and it's really the cost of extraction for us, and that's the feed for the alumina for the HPA plant. So very disruptive. Our cost of production is nearly half to a third, and hence there's a lot of interest in that Johor HPA project.
And what will you be targeting to produce from Johor?
That plant is rated at 4,500 tons per annum of HPA.
So what's that, 15% additional of global supply? And you think the market's kind of comfortable to accept that?
Yes, absolutely.
Interesting, really interesting. And is it a proprietary technology that you've got on the to taking the kaolin? I mean, can you see other kaolin producers, instead of feeding it to the paper industry, can you see them kind of wanting to go down the alumina HPA route?
Yeah, we've got about 8 or 9 patents on that technology. We developed that technology ourselves, and obviously there are other companies now that are following. When you're a market leader, obviously people start to follow and copy what you're doing. So we've got patents that protect that technology, and also we've got patents that protect our Silumina anode technology as well. So we tend to be market leaders, and with market leaders, we do expect that people will follow in where we're heading. So that's why it's important to get to market as quick as you can and establish your base there. Establish
your brand. What's the NPV on the Johor project?
The NPV, so I think it's about $570 million US.
So essentially, you've got 2 projects which are worth just more than 500 million US, and your market cap is about 500 million US.
Our market cap's probably around 150 million at the moment.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, the Johor project has a capital cost investment of around 400 million. So higher investment costs with the NPV around the 570, whereas the Silumina project has a very low capital cost, 95 million with a 507 million NPV. So you can see the economics on the Silumina anode much better than the HPA project.
Although it's an earlier stage. And okay, well, thank you. That's really interesting. Sorry for getting your market cap wrong. I was just looking at a bunch of companies. I think I must have just pulled the wrong number out. So your market cap is around 100. Sorry, in US terms, what is it?
US is probably around 120. Yeah.
Okay, good. There we go. Thank you. What haven't I covered that you feel as if I've kind of missed out?
No, you've covered. You have very good questions, and I think you've covered everything. Well done.
Woo! Iggy, a real pleasure meeting you. What an interesting company. Thank you very much. I look forward to seeing the progress of the company over the course of the next year or so. What would you say are kind of your milestones on a quarterly basis, kind of Q2, 3, 4?
So the news flow, I guess you can expect, is as the company progresses with a pilot plant, there will be a lot more news flow around that. We're looking to sign up some offtake with some downstream partners, so there will be news flow around that. There will be news flow around the DFS and as we progress that. So lots of things that are happening on the horizon. More data, I guess, performance of new batteries. So very exciting project with game-changing technology, and we love people to come on a journey.
Great. Well, thank you very much. I look forward to hearing from you in due course, and good luck in all your endeavours.
Thank you for your time.